I think as a whole, the jiu-jitsu community needs to start looking at it more like a tool than it is something that is some new messiah.
What's going on, guys? Welcome back to the Vanilla Gorilla channel. Today's episode, we have Micah Scarbrough on. He's my best friend, business partner at Corsair BJJ. He is just an overall amazing person. He's done so many different things in his life, from coaching high-level gymnasts, Muay Thai, kickboxing, so many different things, and he's ended up in jiu-jitsu where he has just leveled up his experience. I also want to share with you his perspective on trying to find a balance in life with keeping jiu-jitsu as a priority, but not letting it overrun your life and ruining things for you. All right, guys, please, if you haven't already, hit the subscribe button so my children can eat. That's pitiful. So, without further ado, welcome to the episode.
I'm sweating.
Cool.
I'm
Sounds
sweating
good.
now.
You should be sweating.
I did just roll with the 20-year-old. That hurt my feelings.
Dude. What's it like? What's it feel like getting older?
I'm way more crunchy. I used to think I was only going to vibe with one of the Rice Krispie guys instead of all three.
Yeah, I still vibe with the Pillsbury Doughboy. Dude, everybody thought that I just burned my mustache off with the straightener.
Did they really?
Yeah, because I bought the straightener and like 2 weeks later, I just shaved everything off. And so I came to work and everybody's like, dude, like, did you burn it off?
Like a National Lampoon kind of.
I was like, maybe.
Dang it!
Just gone.
Oh man.
Why do we even do business together?
I don't know. I think we have an excellent business idea.
But no one to run the business portion of it?
Is that why we brought the wives on?
Pretty much.
Excellent. All right, that's all the time we have now.
Thank you. Man, so I don't really know how to kick this off other than I just want to really hear a little bit more about your background in other martial arts, because there's a legitimate question that I have about it.
Oh, no.
And so you did Shotokan?
Yeah, I did I did Shorin-ryu, which is similar to Shotokan, yeah.
Okay. And I guess remind me what all you did.
So I got a brown belt in Shorin-ryu, Okinawa karate. I did Tai Chi and Kung Fu, where I started doing Sanda kickboxing. Because of Sanda kickboxing, I switched, I started cross-training with Muay Thai. And then I wrestled in high school. I should have added that because, wrestling. I just wanted to wear the singlet, to be honest with you.
That's not a martial art.
It really isn't. And then I did, then I started jiu-jitsu like in my early 20s. Yeah.
Well, way to be very specific.
Dude, I'm too old to get specific on age at this point. I don't even remember exactly I remember I started before I met my wife.
Yeah.
I think I was in my, I want to say my sophomore year of college. And then I was working at the Muay Thai gym that I was at. And on my breaks, I would go in with the jiu-jitsu guys. I started with a guy named Eddie Edmonds. He was under Pedro Sauer. And that guy's a stud. He's still teaching to this day. And that guy is just ridiculous. Like the quintessential, like Salt Lake City, like LDS guy, just like super clean cut, coiffed, and just like closet jacked. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
he would never wear anything that showed off anything he had. And then he was just chocolate cake strong, just for no reason whatsoever. And the guy was just the nicest cat on the planet. Like the most unassuming guy. He looked like a computer programmer.
Dude, by the way, SLC Punk is probably one of my favorite movies.
As it should be. Yeah, I'm a Utahard. My family's from Texas, but I'm an implant to Utah.
So you did Kung Fu as well, right? Mm-hmm. Okay, so you've done Kung Fu. Mm-hmm. How long did you do that?
Shorin-ryu I think I did that for about 8 years. I did that from like 12 to off and on till about 18, 19, 20. So about that. So from 20 So I probably did that for 3 or 4 years. I got into Sanda kickboxing towards the end of that stint. And then, so like around 23, 24, I was doing specifically Muay Thai. And then around that time, between that gap, I was starting to do jiu-jitsu.
Gotcha. And then, so during that time, you were still coaching and stuff, right?
Yeah. So I was coaching Sanda. I actually had a guy that was training under me that went and won the Sanda championships in he took second. I had 2 guys go, and they took second in their respective weight classes in San Francisco. They had this big kung fu like international thing. So I started doing Muay Thai to accent my Sanda, and then I always wanted to get into jiu-jitsu when I saw the UFC in '94 come out. I really wanted to do it, but there was no jiu-jitsu schools in Utah, so I started wrestling. Because in '94 I was in high school, so I started wrestling instead, which I'm actually grateful for now. I'm glad I got a wrestling foundation before I got into jiu-jitsu.
Yeah.
But what was nice about Eddie was actually really big on wrestling and judo. And so it was just, I didn't know any different. Like, it was really weird for me when I first moved to Texas, and like jiu-jitsu was kind of considered ground game only. It was really, really weird to me because Eddie was teaching stand up. He was teaching wall wrestling. And we were in the gi when we were doing it too. So It was just really, really weird to me.
It's interesting because that's when we opened up Corsair, like, that was your biggest thing, was like, our guys are going to have stand up.
Yeah.
We're not going to be butt scooters. Like, we're going to press forward and we're going to get the takedowns. Like,
I think there's a time to pull guard. I really do.
Yeah.
It's just not every time.
Oh, for sure.
So we do have we have an unofficial rule here where it's like, hey, if there's no takedown within 30 seconds to a minute, one of you has to become the filthy butt scooter.
Oh, dude. So the last 2 times that I've competed, what was it? Pans and then Worlds. So the guy that I was going with, neither one of us were getting the takedown. And like a minute and a half in, like we both got disadvantages, like points taken away. And we were like, crap. So I had to pull guard both times.
Yeah. But I'd rather that. I would rather that though. Cause I mean, at least then, I think competition should point to what I believe jiu-jitsu is really made for, which is self-protection and self-improvement. That's what I really think it's supposed to be, but I don't really think it goes that way now.
So I hear, like, I'll be listening to podcasts and I'll be hearing people just talking about how like jiu-jitsu changed their life and it's all these different types of things. You were almost going to quit.
Yeah. It changed my life for the worstest.
Explain that.
Yeah, so I met my wife in college at the University of Utah. She was actually on the gymnastics team. They're on a full ride scholarship. Like, she was a part of what they called the Fantastic Four at the time. So she was this freshman who started on all events, just ridiculous. Like, she was on the world's team. She missed being an alternate on the Olympic team by like a 0.5 of a point. It was just like her toes were like this instead of like this. And then, so she's accomplished some really crazy things. Like, she was one of those people when I was talking to her, she was one of those athletes that first saw who she wanted to like be. And then ended up competing against them later. And she started at a fairly late age in gymnastics. I mean, for gymnastics, it's going to sound dumb when I say it, but she started when she was 7. But technically, usually high-level gymnasts start at like around 2, 3, 4. They're in the gym, and that wasn't for her. Like, at the time, I guess. I don't know. But we met in college. We had a Spanish class together. There's no reason why she should have dated me, let alone married me, but here we are. And but when we got married, she was retiring. She had a pretty significant back injury. And then I was still kind of competing, kind of figuring out if I had a neck injury at the time. Like, she was there while I was rehabbing it, getting shots in my neck with, I had a bunch of shots in my neck with, what is it called? I can't remember, but they were just trying to like numb the nerve and everything like that. So I've had neck injuries from wrestling and kickboxing. Yeah. So it wasn't something I came into like fresh jiu-jitsu or anything like that. But so she came in, I was still trying to push it, but me being, Tropic Thunder about it, where you never want to go full something or other, I I was like, I'm going to keep going. So I would actually like call in to work like, hey, I'm going to be late so I can get some training in. And I was married and I was like trying to get ready. And my wife was like, what, and at the time, she and I were, college students. So like that cut in income was pretty significant. So she's like, you keep doing this, I'm out. And so it almost like, and it caught some contention in our lives. Cause I've been a lifelong martial artist. I brought in some really stupid thoughts. Like I didn't have a healthy father figure in my life, and my home, my upbringing wasn't exactly great. It wasn't family centric. And so I didn't have anything to base that on. So I didn't have a healthy understanding of what marriage actually was, other than like through my faith. And I'm a convert into Christianity. And I was pretty young at the time. And so like what was really hilarious, like was I was like, oh, I'm going to show you. And I went to the Bible and was like and I realized that the list of being a good husband is like this. And the list of being a good wife is like this. And I was just like, and so I actually took a 5-year break. I realized my neck wasn't rehabbing well.
Yeah.
I started having frequent migraines, like ocular migraines. I'd get tingling in my hands all the time. And I was 26 at this point. And I was realizing I was kind of going in a track that wasn't exactly healthy. And this is when there wasn't a lot of good training practices. It was just like go hard or go home type of mentality.
Yeah.
And there wasn't a lot of access to like, physical therapists. Like there wasn't that like sponsorship thing going, like you're just doing it because you're, I'm a man and I'm going to do manly things, and like there's no money in it. You know what I mean? Yeah. Not like they have now. And so I just realized, right, like for where we're at, it wasn't very healthy. So I actually backed away from jiu-jitsu because I almost ended up divorced.
Right. And so then during your hiatus from jiu-jitsu, you were coaching gymnastics.
Yeah, my wife tricked me into that. Yeah.
And you have no background in gymnastics.
Except for when I was falling out of trees and things like that.
Right. So going into, like, I think
my dismounts were great out of those trees.
just going into something that you've never done before. You have no background in it.
No.
Kind of being led by her. Like,
right.
What accomplishments do you have through gymnastics?
Through gymnastics, none. Through coaching gymnastics. Oh, that was loud. Sorry. So it's really weird. If there's any gymnastics fans, I'm probably going to pop some bubbles. It's very nepotistic in gymnastics, even in the coaching world.
I'm a firefighter. What does nepotistic mean?
It just like, well, I'm kind of probably using it off. So nepotism is basically when something gets handed down to someone else, like not because of merit, but because of who they are in relation to the other person.
Gotcha.
And so when I was showing up, they were just kind of looking at me as like, oh, like kind of patting me on the head. Oh, you're the husband of a high-level gymnast. But they really wanted Rachel to coach. And Rachel's one of those crazy people that can act like she made it to a crazy high level, but she actually understands how to get people to the crazy high level. Like gymnastics fully showed me that just because you're good at doing something doesn't mean you can actually be good at showing someone else how to do it.
Right.
And Rachel's one of those weird, like nebulous 1%ers that she had just enough drive and athleticism to help her get there, but she had to work at it to get there. She has one of the craziest work ethics I've ever seen. So they were kind of patting me on the head, like, hey, we really want this, like, University of Utah athlete coaching here, because it like just helped bolster their program because they were so close to the University of Utah. And the University of Utah, they for the longest time have never really been outside of the they're part of the Super Six in gymnastics of like NCAAs, where they're always one of the top 6 schools, right? And they kind of bounce around in there. And so it's a pretty big deal. Like Rachel's competed in front of like tens of thousands of people, and then like I've competed again, with my mom watching, if she remembered. But so they really wanted her, so they just kind of let me come in, and I would just shadow and spot. And then they found out that I had some conditioning background, like training people, so they let me condition their higher level athletes, which are their alternates. They're called alternates. You have like compulsory, and then your alternates. Or not alternates. I can't remember what it is. I've been out of there so long. Optionals. It's optionals. So I'd condition the optionals while I was like basically a rec gym person. And then finally Rachel kind of picked up that they weren't giving me a shot. So she would start teaching me how to spot her optional group. So I was spotting bars for her, and I was learning how to coach fundamental gymnastics through her. And then they kind of, the original gym that we started working at together, it's just too long. Like,
No, dude, you're good.
They were kind of pushing her down, and like her girls, so they kind of gave her the B squad and this other person the A squad.
Yeah.
And Rachel flipped that B squad and beat the A squad, right? But then when it came time to fill the spot for a high level coach, they gave the other woman it. And Rachel was like, you didn't do that. And so we got a job at another gym. She pulled me in to coach the lower level compulsories with someone else. And so Rachel actually, you know, as much as you think I might be, from what I was saying earlier, like this misogynistic prick, which, you know, fair. I was actually mentored through my first half of my coaching career, at least in gymnastics, by my wife. Yeah. And so we eventually started a program in Austin where we've had, you know, I think we owned 15% of the USAG top 100 at one time, which is all levels, but we had 15 kids on that at one year. We've had a Westerns floor champion, multiple state championships, multiple regional championships, you know, so we did well. And like eventually what it turned out is like Rachel just parked me on vault and bar so she can coach beam and floor, and then we would finagle it. So the long story was we did those things.
So a pretty good record in gymnastics.
We did all right.
And then you came back into jiu-jitsu. And I guess my question for you earlier of like, what's your background in other martial arts is you started martial arts at 12. Mm-hmm. And I know that you're ADHD, mm-hmm. right? And all that stuff.
Well, I have brain trauma. Yeah.
That too. So what had you stick with jiu-jitsu?
It goes back a couple of things. So I had a brief stint with the sheriff's department. I started seeing kind of a couple of things going on with self-defense formats mm-hmm. that I thought was like would get people in trouble. And one of them is like, you know, I think Muay Thai is just as effective as a self-defense art as jiu-jitsu. I think that the caveat, the problem with it is that when it comes to a legal standpoint, if you knock a guy out and he falls and hits his head on a curb and he ends up, you know, pushing a skull fragment into piano lessons, like that's you, bro. Like now you're facing probably manslaughter charges, you know, like whoopsies, you know, where for the most part, when I was working, you know, sheriff's department and I would see people like in an engagement, the guys that knew how to wrestle or grapple, they could usually take the piss out of somebody with a takedown and a pin, and they wouldn't have to even strangle a guy or put him in armbar. They just hold him down. And if no one else jumped in, that would take the piss out of them. Because like really a lot of times a street fight, like in a bar setting anyway, is more about bravado and like showing off for the girl that could give two shits about you. You know what I mean? Like that's kind of what it is. And so to me, the reason why I stuck with jiu-jitsu is again more towards kind of like my faith base. Mm-hmm. It like I want to try to handle things as peaceably as I can. So if I can just take the piss out of somebody and just be like, hey, are you cool? Because I don't want to hurt you. I don't want to be hurt. And I want to go home. You know what I mean? Yeah. So that's kind of why I stuck with jiu-jitsu.
Makes sense. Like, how do you separate with your faith? Like, how do you separate yourself from jiu-jitsu and like allowing yourself to put it on a pedestal?
Well, again, I almost lost my wife. That freaked me out because she is the most stable person I've had in my life. So I think that really squared me up. Like when I looked at what I was actually supposed to believe versus that. And then, you know, the next thing is that like the first two commandments are pretty big on that one, you know, so that's another thing. The problem I see is that the current meta of jiu-jitsu kind of freaks me out because I think people are putting it too much on the pedestal. You said earlier, you know, the jiu-jitsu saved my life crew. That bothers me. Jiu-jitsu didn't do shit for you. Jiu-jitsu just was there. It's what you chose to do in that format. Now, again, I'll be very clear. I think people can say that about CrossFit. I think people can say that about Tough Mudder. Jiu-jitsu didn't do crap for you. Absolutely nothing. You chose to show up. You chose to hide deal with your ego. You made sure that oh man, if it's a fitness thing, you're like, man, I am not doing very well.
Yeah. So it seems like in a lot of aspects, a lot of people will revere the black belt. Like, oh, and I get it, man. Like in the fire department, in the military, like you respect the position.
Yeah.
Right. Like up in that setting.
Yeah.
But the bowing down and the cowing down to, the black belt in all aspects of life.
Gross.
It's pretty detrimental, right? Like
horrible. I have met and I've dealt with a lot of high level guys that would make my jiu-jitsu seem like crap. But I don't think I would ever want my daughter or my son be mentored by them whatsoever, even if they could take them to the upper echelons of jiu-jitsu or whatever. I saw it in gymnastics. My wife got subpoenaed because of Larry Nassar, which was the pinnacle. And there were some people that saw it coming, but they chose to push themselves, and I'm not saying they're asking for it, I'm not saying that, but there's people that saw the red flags and chose to ignore it, may not knowing how far or how bad it really was, but there was some weird stuff that was going on, and they chose to look past it because they were like, this person can take me to the next level, or my girl or my athlete needs to be the best, or I need to be the best in whatever it takes.
I think that's one of the biggest things that I know that you and I both, we try to preach is like, you can be a really, really good jiu-jitsu player.
Oh yeah.
Right. And I want our grapplers to be well-rounded as a whole. Right.
Yeah.
Obviously great on the mats. I want them to be able to at peak physical condition, be able to perform. Right. Yeah. But what about their internal struggles, right? Who are they as a person? Because you can be a dope black belt, but be an asshole.
There's more, and I think there's more of those.
Yeah, and that's what I don't want for our grapplers. Like anybody following, like be focused on improving who you are on the inside.
Yeah,
your mental and spiritual well-being, making sure that you are taking care of those aspects just as much as you are taking care of the physical aspects.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think. Well, and again, but people have flipped it. I think jiu-jitsu right now is it's growing super fast. It's still small. Like if you think of the grand scheme of things, it's still super small. Like you can still walk into a gym and run into a 1%er pretty easily. I think the problem is that we've stopped looking at it as a tool for something, and we started looking at it as something other. It's something to aspire to, and like. Jiu-jitsu in and of itself doesn't exist. It's just a codified system of combat that we all choose to practice under, and we have this kind of arbitrary rule set, and this is what we kind of do. No one else cares about it unless you're doing jiu-jitsu. You know what I mean? It doesn't really matter. And I think the core problem is that and I think it's an American problem in a lot of ways, is that we get to this station where we feel like we have this sense of power over something or someone, and it feeds that American ego. You know what I mean? It makes it like, oh, I got this, and it is a powerful tool. I just, again, I'm going to mention a couple of people that could absolutely destroy me, but that doesn't make them right. Like Jocko, or he's like, it's a superpower, man. Like you're feeding ego right there. Like you're feeding into that negative ego where you're taking someone and being like, oh, I want a superpower. Like you don't know what you're wielding at that point. You don't know who you're handing that to, right? And so yes, is it important to have these people train? And again, Danaher, man, he's actually someone I try to emulate in some ways, like in more than one way. I think the guy is making a point now of the fact that you don't have to be the highest level competitor to have the highest level of training to provide to someone. Like, he was an amazing lifter. He was a Muay Thai kickboxer. I don't know, and someone can correct me on this, but I don't think he ever competed at a very high level in jiu-jitsu. But the fact that he's coached so many people at a high level shows that, like, hey, other sports are correct, that you don't have to be the highest level competitor to be at a very high level of coaching. You need to understand the game is what you need to do. Right. But I think in one of the recent interviews he did, and I can't remember if it was Lex Friedman or not, he was talking about how he doesn't try to be a like moral mentor or for like whatever. He just wants to coach jiu-jitsu. And I think that's dangerous, because when you choose not to lead your culture in your gym or whoever's around you, if you're the pinnacle person, if you're the person that everybody's coming to train, and you're not setting a moral, ethical standard of how they're going to deal or act, they represent you no matter what. So my ultimate goal is not to tell people what to believe, but like, they need to understand that this is a tool that I'm showing you. And it's like, no matter what side of the argument you're on this, jiu-jitsu is like a gun. I can either hunt with it and provide it for my family, or I can kill somebody with it. And I think as a whole, the jiu-jitsu community needs to start looking at it more like a tool than it is something that is some new messiah that is coming in and helping you make your weight loss goals.
How are you leading our guys at Corsair?
So my approach is, I think my superpower is my mediocrity as a black belt. The fact remains, I've never been a ridiculously 1% competitor. I've competed. I know what it takes to compete. I know what it takes to be. I know what it takes to be athletic. I know the fundamental difference between what fitness is and what athleticism is, because they are not the same. They have similarities, but they are definitely not the same. I also realize I can't do it on my own, and I will never allow my athletes to think I have all the answers. And as soon as you have someone that is in a gym set up like that, now you've set up something that's might as well be a David Koresh scenario in my mind. Like, you've set up a cult where, you know what I mean? Like, and it happens all too often, in my opinion. But
it's interesting you say cult.
No, it's not. You knew what's coming.
So what do you mean by cult? Because you and I have talked about this ad nauseum.
So let's get nauseous. So, if you look at how a cult works, you have a person you'll have a person at the top of the pecking order, and they're promising something. Now, typically, it's usually like salvation or something like that, and there's only one way to do it in a specific sense. And if you get kicked out of it, you're all the way out, bro. You're in the out, and it's usually very, very specific. And then there's a lot of nepotism in it, and there's only this way you can do it, and there's a lot of controlling how the followers do things. Right? You're not the in crowd if you're not doing this specific thing. Right. There's when you start getting into that, where you start trying to control what people think politically or philosophically or theologically because you're at the top, you're in trouble. Or if you have someone that is being a predator on their own people, be it with the opposite sex or, God forbid, even worse, like children, you got a problem. That's, you can sit there and say that's happened in theology. Yeah, it does. But we have a deep problem with that in gymnastics as well, but in jiu-jitsu as well. Anytime you have someone that has like the keys to the kingdom, and and you look at them as a means of getting those keys, you've set yourself up for control.
Yeah. So just really having that mindset of me as an instructor, I'm just another person, right?
Yeah.
I have some knowledge to give you as far as this is concerned.
Yeah.
But I don't have all the answers. And being open and upfront and honest and clear
just as far as expectations, right? Like any type of relationship that you have, like there should be clear expectations, right? From the get-go. And if you don't have that, if there's something that you're hiding or being like, I have something, but you can't know about it yet. Like, that's where it very much turns into that cultish mentality.
Yeah. That's why I think karate went the way it did in America. You know what I mean? It's like, I remember, you know, when jiu-jitsu started coming on the scene and we went to our karate instructor, he's like, hey, does our system have ground technique? He's like, yeah, but it's not until after this. And we're like, and that's when me being this, like, I don't know if I'm not saying I'm smart, but like even at my young age at that time, I was like 15 or 16, it kind of made me like, really, bro? Like, you're going to make someone, like, it's obviously pretty important. People know this right now.
Yeah.
And you're going to hold that back. That seems kind of shady, you know?
Right.
You know, and that's why it's like this, the way we systemize, which is important. Don't get me wrong. Like the belt system and things like that, there is important aspects of it. I don't think it's perfect. And I don't think any human system of anything is perfect. But when you have someone's like, yeah, but you got to wait. You know what I mean? So yeah, I agree with you. That's one reason when someone comes in, I'm always upfront and honest about how we're filthy casuals at the gym. You and I set that up very, very honestly. We're here to have fun with jiu-jitsu. We're here to help you with your goals. Whatever you say your goals are, that's what Corsair is going to get behind. So if you come in here and say, hey man, I'm a 38-year-old, you know, single dad who's just trying to hang out with my son, which we have a ton of, and lose weight. It's like, okay, bro, I'm not going to push you heavy to compete. Like if you're holding down 2 jobs and you're just trying to get some time with your son, just get in here and train well.
One of the things that I love and you've done a really good job of this with our culture is we do have those 15, 16, 17-year-old athletes that are coming in here wanting to train, but they do a really good job of knowing what their partner's goal is. That 38-year-old dad that wants to lose his dad bod that has to show up to work the next day is not going to want to train at competition level with a 17-year-old.
No.
He's just not. But our guys are doing really well with moderating how they're rolling.
Yeah.
And I think that's a really good thing to learn early on, especially if you're a very athletic dude or a bigger person, understanding that it's okay to have strength and all that stuff, but knowing when to dial it back and when not to is very appropriate.
Yeah, I think I got that from Pedro Sauer. Like when Pedro Sauer came to Utah, there was like no other jiu-jitsu grapplers there. And so what he was caught doing was he would teach his students like 2 or 3 ways to finish an armbar. And then he himself would start in the armbar. So he could work how to get out. Like we act like this positional sparring thing is a new thing in the last decade. And I'm not like, oh, the Gracies were doing, no, like Pedro had to do that. And the guy was ridiculously good. You know what I mean? So I think that kind of falls into play where you can still be a high level training. Like I think we have to set up a culture, like, cause most gyms aren't going to be like Henzo Gracie Austin or B Team or, you know, where they have a bunch of high level guys going there all the time or can afford to do that. It's hobbyists helping athletes but athletes need to get off their pedestal and help these hobbyists out. There's no reason why a hobbyist can't get pretty close to high level. Yeah, but it has to be a team. That's why when we started the gym, you and I were really big on communicate what you need.
Absolutely.
You know, and we'll tell our young guys, it's like, look, if this guy can't give you the pace you need, start in a really bad position. Just start in a bad position. You know, you'll get really good. You know, I mean, put yourself in a place that you hate being. You're going to get awesome at getting out.
Yeah, dude, my entire blue belt career I was just really bad at escaping bottom.
Oh,
especially because I was with Troy constantly.
Oh, Troy's evil.
He would just be crushing my soul. And instead of panicking about it, like I just forced myself in that position constantly. I would just put myself under everybody.
Just bad. Just bad.
The entire blue belt phase. I would just stay on bottom.
Dude, and now you're just you're hard to control now.
I got really comfortable.
Yeah.
And I was fine. I was perfectly fine being on bottom. It
Yeah.
sucked, but you learn how to have that poker face and learn how to position yourself a little bit. So just putting yourself in that bad spot. And it doesn't stop. Like you're saying, Pedro Sauer was doing it.
Dude, yeah. And at the time, he was like 3 or 4 fourth degree black belt.
Yeah, exactly. And so just putting yourself in a bad position, that's how you're going to get better. Like if I'm constantly doing the things that I'm good at, obviously I'm building up those neural pathways in that one thing, but what about everything else?
Yeah.
So
Yeah. So I think that's the starting of it. I think a lot of gyms fall into this camp of I have to be either just competition focused or hobbyist focused. No, I think you need to transition your mentality to service. You have to serve the person that you're training with in some manner. And sometimes that means you're going to have to give a little bit more. Like if someone has a competition in the next 6 to 8 weeks, you might have to put your needs on hold for that specific person, but you got another role coming up in 3 to 6 minutes. You know what I mean? Yeah. So, turn your ego off just a little bit to help someone else. And oftentimes you're going to find when you're helping that person, maybe they need to start in a bad position for them, but what if you didn't finish them? Well, now you learn that, hey, in that position, you're really bad at the near side armbar, or you're really bad at the mounted triangle, and you need to get better at it. And so now you have something that you can take take some notes down on a vanilla gorilla journal.
Are you tired of trying to pay attention in class only to feel like you're drinking from a fire hose?
Because trust me, we get it.
Introducing the Vanilla Gorilla Jiu-Jitsu Journal. The first waterproof journal for BJJ. You can be as wet as Niagara Falls and still be able to take notes. Quit being a guard puller and getting blasted in the face, and get your Vanilla Gorilla Journal of the day and start working on your blast doubles.
And get better at, you know what I mean?
yeah.
So there's more than one way to get better, but I think we as a society inside of jiu-jitsu, the subculture that we have, we need to get better at helping others get better rather than looking for our next highlight on IG.
I mean, it's that true leadership mentality, right? Like, you don't have to be the coach to be a leader on the mats, right? But like, to have a true leadership mentality, you have to be willing to lay aside your needs and your wants.
Oh yeah.
And help.
Dude, I was so impressed with one of our students, Diego, in our kickboxing class. We have this really, and I'm not saying this in a bad way, we have this really neurotic new kid coming in. And he just wants to do kickboxing in our kickboxing program. And Diego's getting ready to do a Muay Thai fight. Mm-hmm. And he stopped we're doing a conditioning format for kickboxing, and all of a sudden I look over and Diego is breaking down the kick for this kid. And Diego is really focused on his stand-up right now, and he's taking the time to help this kid out. You know what I mean? That's leadership. That sacrificial leadership was like, I can lose 15, 20 seconds of my round to help this kid that is just trying. He's neurotic, man. You can tell that he's here to build confidence and get in shape. You can tell he's nervous and scared. And I can't coddle the kid.
Yeah.
But we can damn well take some time to make sure that, hey, we know your standard of training is different than ours, but that doesn't mean we can't help you get to the standard that you're trying to get to.
And that makes me so happy to hear about
Diego. And he's an 18-year-old kid. His goal is to go into the UFC, and for him to take the time. I think that shows the standard of Corsair. I would much rather have some mid high level guys that treat others really well, that golden rule standard, than some 1%er that is so selfish in their training that after their jiu-jitsu career, they have no one around them or no one to appreciate who got them there. And I think that's all too common at this point.
Absolutely. Dude, so what are some actionable items that the people listening can take home with them, can actually start implementing this week?
I think knowing what your goals are when you come into the gym daily, like have a specific goal in mind for yourself, but also I think it would be even smarter to have a goal to be a good teammate in some capacity when you come in. Have someone in mind that you see needs help, or kind of have an idea of how you're going to help someone, in some way. It doesn't have to be instructing either. It can be like, hey, I've noticed when I've rolled with this person, I've actually got upset that they're not doing great on their side control. Like, they're not giving me like good feedback. Well, maybe they need help with side control escapes, like maybe give them a little bit of feedback. Don't do it during the roll because then it just looks bad. But I honestly think if you put yourself in someone else's shoes, especially if you remember what it was like for you coming in on your first time, you know, or even if you're a D1 wrestler coming in, it's like, you don't step on someone else's toes who's instructing, but afterwards give some people some constructive criticism with, the, compliment sandwich. Find something that they've done well and give it to them, and don't expect anything in return. That's another thing. Don't give someone a compliment expecting something back. That's not good for you either, because now you're setting up to pad your own ego, and that's the problem we're in right now. Trey, who's another black belt here, does a great job of calling it highlight culture. Like, don't be looking to feed your Instagram with something like at the expense of someone else. Always look for a way of helping someone. And I guarantee you, your jiu-jitsu will get better. Like, when you're forced to like formalize an idea and then like give it to someone else, if you don't know it well enough, you're going to know. Like, you're going to know unless your ego's in the way, for sure. So I would just say that. Just come in expecting to help someone else as much as you're expecting to be helped. And then as far as like the cult of jiu-jitsu, if you have a coach that's not allowing you to cross train or has something to say about every position, like the nuances, everything, without having the experience in it, that's a problem. If you have a coach that can't be like, who's really good at this? Check out this brown belt over here, or check out this purple belt over here. He's got a great game at this. I felt kind of awkward this week because I'm teaching Ghost Escape, which is actually your forte. But I just saw a lot of guys that, you coached it and they were hitting it really well, but I was able to kind of finagle it because they forgot a couple of details you gave, and you naturally kind of do. So I wanted to hit back into that. So it's like, but I'll always point him back. Hey man, Ghost Escape is this guy, like, just try to be Peter Venkman every now and then.
Where can people follow you and find you?
They can't. I'm CorsairBJJ.com. Corsair BJJ on Instagram.
As well as be following Corsair BJJ on YouTube as well. We're having a lot of our techniques, put up there. If you're wanting to follow us, that'd be great. Also, check out letsmakejiujitsu.com.
Let's Make Jiu-Jitsu.
They have a ton of instructors on there. If you want to, please use the instructor code Filthy Casuals. That is all one word. And you get your first 3 days free. Check it out. And yeah, let's make it happen.
Awkward.